Well, hello guys, and welcome back to our channel. So this would more or less be the last chapter in this session where we wrap up our tutorial on backend development with Go. And what I would like us to talk about in this topic would of course be deployment. I've also checked out a new branch called deployment, as you can see over here. And what I would like to show you in this tutorial would be how we can package our application and get it ready for deployment, and maybe also even deploy it, test it out to see how it's looking in the end. I will give you some pointers as to what's possible as regards development, and maybe also introduce you a little bit about automation. If you're not of course you don't need to know this, or maybe we can actually just stop with packaging our application, and I think that should already be more than enough. With containerization, so we are going to do like a multi-stage build, and in the end we'll get our application ready to be deployed to any container registry. So without further ado guys, let's jump right in. To get started, I'm probably just going to come down here and create a new file. I'm just going to call this docker file. This, of course, has to be the way we define our Docker file. It has to be named Docker file, more or less. And I have some IntelliSense, of course, to help me write better Docker file. That's also why I get this red squiggly line over here telling me that something is wrong with my file. So we're gonna go ahead right now without wasting much of our times and start defining what we need to define to set up our application. So what we're gonna do here is gonna be pretty straightforward. I'm just gonna close this guy, and yes, and now the first thing, of course, so like I said, we'll have to like a multi-stage build. So the first stage here would be, I'll call this our build stage, and come on, and the next stage here would be our what should I call this? Just I want to find, I can call this maybe deploy stage, something like this. I think that's fine, and that should be enough. So within the build phase, this is actually when we get to copy all our files and then build it, of course, into a single binary. So what I'm going to do, of course, is to pull from the base Golang image. So if I look into our mod file, I can see that we developed this using Go version 1.20. That's also what I'm going to require here. So I can simply go to Golang 1.20.0, and I'll pull from this as build. So this is what I'm going to use, of course, to build our application. And then I'm going to provide a work there, and I'm going to set this to, I'm just going to put this in a folder called app. So this is going to be more or less tentative and be available only within the build phase. And now if we remember, we had a couple of environment variables that we actually made reference to that we had in this env file, and then now we have the option of actually bringing all of them in here. So I can actually call this I can bring in the args this way. I can say something like SQL name, whatever, like this, and then I can provide this again as an env like this. So SQL name, and this would be equal to, I use the dollar sign to reference this SQL name. And of course I don't need this, I don't need this curly braces. So this is one way we can actually do this. So if we are running this Docker, for example, say within GitHub Actions or within the Azure DevOps environment, and what it means is that we have to set these environment variables within the repo, and then we can reference them this way so they get injected in our build when we are building. So again, if we have any number of environment variables, we can actually just do them this way and then bring all of them into scope. And when we've done that, we've copied all our environment variables, then we have to now go ahead and copy all our files and then go to the build phase. So to copy all our files, we can do a simple copy. Then we provide like a source and a destination. Again, the IntelliSense I have here is also quite useful. As you can see, it gives you quite good information. So it tells me, of course, the first argument here would be a source, and then the next would be a destination. Pretty straightforward. But of course, if you don't want to follow this route, if you don't want to copy everything at once, of course, you can use the Docker ignore file, or you can also simply go ahead and copy the files individually. This is a longer route, but again, just to let you know that's possible. And to do that, it's pretty straightforward. We can copy go.mod like this, we put it in here. We always have to provide the source and destination. Now I copy my, let's say, go.sum. Again, I put it in the same folder. And now I can now run my go mod download. So this is going to download all my packages from me. And then after that, if you're still interested, more or less, what you can now do is to start copying your files. Again, like I said, if you want to copy them individually, this is something you could do. So we could say we want to copy every Go file in the root, and we move them again to the root of this directory we have over here. And then we can, of course, go through all we have up here. So we can actually start from this one. Again, like I said, if you want to copy them individually, you can now copy from API. I think we don't have any subfolders. Yes. So now we copy everything with the .go extension, and then we move it into this file and then put it in an API folder. But that's really all we have to do if we want to copy them individually. So maybe I put a comment here and I say copy files individually like this. And then this, of course, would copy everything like this. And then we have to do this for all of them. So for config and then helpers, for example, we have to do this for all the folders and everything. And then when all the copying is done and we are satisfied, so now we can actually also, maybe if there are some required dependencies that we need to have running on the system itself, maybe it's the OS more or less, we would need to install those here. And those could be things like if we need to install things like, let's say, go install net/nettip, something like this. If we have a package that's like this that we need to install on the OS that our application actually relies on, maybe also things like OpenSSL, for example, this is when we actually get to install those. And after that, we now can actually build our application, because again, this is the build phase more or less. So we can actually run our Go build. Pretty straightforward. And again, remember we used some flags in the end. This is also when we get to inject those flags. So I can also add those here, LD flags, for example. If I can type flags and I provide my string, and then of course I need to pass this argument. And of course with X, I provide key value pair, providing the destination and the value. So we had something called API version in our main package. And this is when we get to give it a value, and then we can call it, say, v1 like this. And then we need to provide an output, and then I can give it this a name. I can call this Golang guide. So in the end, it's going to output a build for us called Golang guide. And with this, I'm just going to target a Linux environment. If I'm targeting a Windows environment, of course, I would get an executable in the end. But for me, I'm targeting a Linux environment. So that's why I have it like this. So at this point, we would be done with our build phase. So for the deploy phase, I'll pull like a distroless Debian, actually, like a really, really simple small one. So I'll go to grc.io, and then I go to distro, I go to distroless, yes, and then base, and then Debian 10, like this. And then I provide my work there one more time, and I'm just going to use the current path like this. And now, if there are anything further I need to copy, let's say we had some, like we have here, this form HTML, if we actually needed this in here, because of course, if you can already imagine, we don't build this in here. But if we still need this on this point, now we can actually just copy it. So for now, for this example, I'm just going to copy, let's say I'll copy everything that is a .html, and then I simply put it in here also. What did I put in here? Why did I have a caret? And then I copy every HTML file, then put it in here more or less. And now I can actually more or less finish up here. But at this point, when I build and deploy, my Docker would of course run as a root user. And it's of course not advised, because um this you don't need that much permissions actually to run this Docker container within a Linux environment. So what I can actually do is I can say, of course, I don't forget to expose the port that our app will be running on in the end. So I can, assuming it's 80, I will expose 80, and then maybe I say user, I say non-root like this, and then just to make sure I'm running with a non-root user more or less. And then I can now define my entry point and then provide my executable, and my executable will of course be like we defined up there, Golang guide like this, and we are done actually. There are a lot more we can do, but this is like the bare minimum we need to deploy our application. And maybe what I can actually do next would be to actually build this application into a Docker file and deploy it, and then we can actually test it to see if it behaves the way we want it to behave. So when we are done packaging our application as a Docker container, what we can now do more or less is to go to any cloud provider of our choice and deploy the app, and then test out to see if everything still works as expected. And and to do that, I'm basically just going to give you a couple of options as regards to deployment to the cloud. So some of them are actually completely free, but are mostly just for testing purposes. And some of them also cost some money, but maybe as low as $5 per month. And so what I'm going to do now is maybe take you to the browser and then show you some of these sites. And then I'm just going to let you play around with this and then deploy them. And of course, if everything goes well, of course, please, I would love you to maybe give a shout out to me, and or more or less just let me know. I would like to know if actually someone tried this out. I would really love to know. Anyways, let's move on to the browser so I can show you how to proceed from here. So the first platform I would like to show you would be Heroku. So Heroku is already like been in the game for quite a while now, and after a while, I think they stopped offering like free options for deployment, but I think they still have comparably cheap options as regards to deployment of your workloads more or less. So they have this Echo and Basic, which, as you can see from over here, costs around $5. And of course, they have other more advanced options, but I think this is also already sufficient. And you can maybe scroll down to read through to see what's actually contained. So you see over here, we can actually deploy with Git and Docker. So you can actually hook up your, give Heroku permissions directly from your Docker or from your GitHub account, so that when you deploy more or less, you can of course maybe add some pipeline and then deploy this directly from your repository. And these are some of what's is offered actually. And it's always, I think Heroku will always be a great player in this regard. And the next thing, of course, would be so we looked at Heroku. So the next thing, of course, would be Netlify. And with Netlify, you also get to actually deploy something for free. But again, it's always going to be within a shared server. So you'd always be we'll be sharing resources with a lot more other people. So you might actually experience some latency, but I think it's still okay, especially when you're testing things out and you don't want to incur a lot of cost. The next one that I would want to show you would be Back for App. I think this is a really, really nice option because if you can, as you can see from over here, I think it's also relatively new. So that's why they still offer this free option. But the point is that you get to use this free option to deploy your app, like a Go app, more or less as a container application. Um, and these are more or less the what you get like for your the container more or less that would be running your application. So it will have like a quarter of a CPU, 256 RAM, and then this amount of transfers. So again, it's still going to be a shared CPU because it's not going to be just allocated to you. There are a lot of people like you also who also want to try things out, and all of you are definitely going to be made to share the same resource. And of course, if you don't want to use this, if you feel this is not enough, what you would want to do, of course, there is also this other plan, which of course is still shared, but again, it has a lot more assigned resources and you get to do a lot more things. So like you can see here, it also offers like a global CDN and you also get like daily backup more or less. So so if we look at backend as a service, for example, you can also see they also have like a free plan, as you can see over here, and then you get to again explore however you would want it. But other than that, I think their pricing is also relatively okay, if you ask me. And I don't care so much about this actually, but they have this AI agent that you can also use. For example, if you want to play around with all these AI topics, as you can see here, they have a GPT-3 Turbo AI model that you can maybe also start and then play around and integrate into your app and everything. And that's also really cool. They also have a really nice documentation, so also feel free to check it out if this is, and see if this is more or less what you would need for your workload. The next thing I want to show you is Fly.io. This also is a really good option. If you ask me, it's also a great plan. They offer a lot of nice features, and you can actually see their shared CPU costing around $2 per month, as you can see from over here. And again, you get like around 256 MB for RAM, which is also more or less comparable to what you get here for the backend as a service shared plan. Sorry, container as a service shared plan, which is also what you see over here. So, but that's also what you get here for like $2. And again, if depending on what you want to do, but I think when you want to test things out and just for you to gain that basic knowledge, I think $2. If you pay $2 for the month and then play around as much as you would want, even for the whole month, and then shut it down, I think you'll still be fine. It would be like a good value for your money if you ask me. It's just $2 actually. And then there is of one of my favorites again is also Render. So Render also offers a free plan, like a completely free plan. So as you can also see from here, this says for hobbyists, students, and indie hackers. And of course, it has to be for individuals. So if you scroll down, you also see what's offered. So you have web services, even cron jobs, for example, background workers, free instances, they offer actually lots. Like you also get like managed Postgres for free. You also get automated backups for free and even read replicas. That's like for me, that's like the game changer actually. Um, you know, and then so if we also scroll down, actually, you would see a lot of quite nice features they also provide. Things like zero downtime deploys. They also provide with health checks, and but you are limited to 5 retained bills, which in my opinion is also great. I mean, that's also fine when you're playing around. And there you can actually scroll down and then look at some of what's actually included in here. But again, like I said, trust me, this is more than enough. I think we can actually I don't want to sign in for now, but I'll leave it to you to actually explore this much further to actually see what's offered. And the last option that you have would be railway. This is also a really nice feature, and in my opinion, it offers you actually the best amount of resource for your money, if you ask me. So you can see you get like 8 gigabytes gigabyte of RAM and 8 CPU cores per service, and this is all for $5 per month. So this is really, really great again for when you want to prototype and test, and just to make sure that you really understand some of the things we already covered in this tutorial, to play around, to get your hands dirty. I think this is more than enough to get you started. They also offer a free trial where you get to play things around for a while, but after that, of course, you have to start paying, which again, in my opinion, I think is a fair offer for your money. And apart from all we've mentioned, of course, there will always be AWS and Azure. So with AWS, there will always be the free tier. So if you sign up on AWS, you get to use the free tier, and within the free tier, of course, you have enough resources that you would actually need to run your computes. So if you look over here, we can actually go to 12 months free tier, and maybe also always free, to see what's actually included. So you can already see that if you sign up, you get EC2, more or less. EC2 is AWS uh, classic elastic compute cloud. That's of course would allow you to still run workloads like you would more or less like we've of course talked about until now. So that's also highly possible over here. And then for store, we have S3. So S3 is just for blob storage. So it's you can use it to store images, files, videos, or whatever the case may be. And you also get RDS, as you can see over here, relational database. So this could be MySQL or Postgres or MariaDB or SQL Server. And you get this after you sign up. You can use this for free. That's completely for free with AWS. And then you can also use DynamoDB, which is AWS key value store database, similar to MongoDB if you're familiar with that. Then you also have cloud functions where you can also even run like code that's maybe run like for a limited amount of. You can of course system the auto listen to API requests. That's also possible. And then a lot more you can actually have from here. As you can see from here, the list is actually pretty long. What's actually possible. So what it means is within the AWS cloud, you get a lot more to play around. So if I, for example, select just compute, you see here we get EC2, like I told you already. We get Lambda, we get Lightsail, we even get load balancing and Amazon Container Registry. So of course, you can see over here we can store our container registry, container images, so we can publish them to our to the ECR, because here it also functions for us as a container registry, like we would probably do with say Docker Hub, for example. And then if we go to databases, we see like RDS, DynamoDB, we get Elastic Cache, we even get that database migration, we get downstream for analytics, and then of course MemoryDB for Redis. So this is, we get lots more. If I even go to container again, we see some of the things we already talked about, and much more. So if we go to serverless, we see things like Lambda, S3, DynamoDB, blah blah blah. We also get SNS. So we'll get a lot more if you are new to the cloud. And I also think AWS is pretty much, the APIs are well documented, in my opinion, in comparison to Azure, for example. Sometimes when reading through Azure documentation, I still see lots of typographical errors, but I think AWS is very well documented. So I think this, in my opinion, would also be an option to consider if you're looking for a free cloud to play around, to get your hands dirty. If you have skills that you are lacking, it makes a lot more sense to actually delve into opportunities like this, where you actually get to play around with the real thing at zero cost. That's really the idea. So you can get the experience you would want to get. Anyways, I can also show you Azure free tier, and then we see what's more or less um, obtainable within the free tier when you sign up with Azure. Um, so if you look over here, you would see some of them are for free always, and some are only available, like you can use them for within a 12 months window. And one of them here would be like virtual machines. So you can see here, if you sign up, you can actually use this for free within, of course, for 750 hours each, within the first 12 years of your sign up. And this not only goes for Windows, but you also get Linux machines, and these are actual VMs, so in which you can actually run like workloads. You can even run your your Docker. So if you've ever worked with VMs locally, this is actually what you get out on the cloud. It's also quite similar to the EC2 that AWS offers. You also get Postgres here. You also get blob storage for 12 months. You get Cosmo DB, and but again, remember that the requests are there are some limitations, and if you go above this request, and if you don't have or if you have no CAD added already, then of course further requests will be rejected. But if you do, then you will be billed for those extra work. But if you just want to run, let's say, your Docker container, your Docker service, like we just built it, and then we're looking for where to just run it, Azure App Services will always be the way for you to go. So you can come in here, run your app service, and you can actually run this, say, within a Windows environment or a Linux environment, as the case may be, depending on what you want. And again, we have here Azure Functions, which is again similar to what I showed you with AWS. If I go to serverless one more time, this is also quite similar to AWS Lambda. They are more or less serverless functions in the cloud, similar to, of course, cloud functions for um, Google Cloud, more or less. And of course, you get Event Grid and much, much more. So that will be it, guys. I would leave the link to all of this again in the description. So you would, of course, feel free to check them out. Feel free to explore them if you don't know about them more or less, and take your time, go through each and every one of them, find the one that's most fitting to the kind of workload if you want to run, and then the really important thing is to get your hands dirty, and do not assume that after maybe reading it for a while that you've already assimilated it. Take your time to actually get your hands dirty. That's actually when you get to know if you've learned what you wanted to learn. And yeah, we're going to draw the curtains here, guys. Thank you so much. This has been an eventful journey from me, and I'm also hoping for you as well. And of course, this is how we will be wrapping up this our session for this tutorial series, more or less. And of course, that's not the end of our journey, more or less, but we would of course delve into other topics like I already discussed with you in the past. I would make a curated list, of course, and make some video and then maybe publish them also, so you can be aware of some of the topics we have upcoming, and maybe also get the opportunity to even like suggest some things or vote for or against certain topics. And again, we'll discuss all of them here in detail so that everyone can be carried along. Anyway, guys, like I said before, it's been an eventful journey, and we'll draw the curtain here. Thank you to everyone who's been part of this journey, and I hope to see you again in further series that we'll be releasing on this channel. So stay tuned. We'll have much more interesting content to bring your way. Have a lovely evening, and see you again. Bye bye.